The night the money disappeared, no alarms rang, no guards were knocked unconscious, no vault was blown open, no masked men ran through the streets with guns and duffel bags. And that was the first mistake, because when $500 million vanishes quietly, people assume it never existed in the first place. The transfer cleared at 2:17 a.m. Eastern Time. $500 million gone, not stolen from a bank lobby, not withdrawn from an ATM, not intercepted by hackers in hoodies typing in the dark. It moved cleanly, legally, silently. By the time anyone noticed, the money had already passed through 3 continents, and the official story was simple: accounting error. That's what the public was told. But inside the system, panic spread like a virus, because this wasn't just money, it was untouchable money, funds tied to classified infrastructure projects. Funds that didn't officially exist on any public ledger, funds that were never supposed to move without 12 layers of approval, and yet they moved. The first person to realize something was wrong was not an agent, not a director, not a politician. It was a mid-level compliance analyst named Daniel Mercer, 38 years old, divorced. No criminal record, no enemies, the kind of man who followed rules so strictly his coworkers joked he'd apologize to a door before opening it. Daniel's job was boring by design. He reviewed transaction summaries that were already approved by systems smarter than any human. He wasn't supposed to find crimes, he was supposed to confirm that none existed. But at 6:41 a.m., with burnt coffee in his hand and a screen full of green checkmarks, Daniel noticed something that didn't belong: a transaction ID that didn't follow the format, 1 extra digit. That was it, 1 digit. Most people would have ignored it. Daniel didn't. He pulled the log, then he pulled the shadow log. Then the archived redundancy copy that only existed because Daniel had once complained about a minor formatting inconsistency and forced the department to keep it. That's when he saw it. $500 million had been authorized using credentials that were valid but impossible. The approval chain referenced 3 officials. One was retired, one was dead. And one had never existed. Daniel stared at the screen, his heartbeat slowly getting louder in his ears. Someone hadn't broken into the system, they'd used it perfectly. By noon, Daniel had flagged the transaction internally. By 12:04 p.m. his ticket was closed. No explanation, no follow-up, just a status update. Resolved. That's when the anger started. Daniel reopened the ticket, it closed again, he escalated. Silence. At 3:19 p.m. his supervisor called him into a glass-walled office and smiled the way people do when they're about to lie. "You're chasing a ghost," she said. "There was no theft." Daniel asked a simple question. "Then why was the redundancy archive altered?" The smile vanished. That night, Daniel didn't go home. He stayed, he dug, and what he found made his hands shake. The money hadn't gone to criminals, it hadn't gone offshore, it hadn't vanished into crypto wallets, it had been redistributed. Split into hundreds of smaller transfers, all routed through shell organizations that shared one thing in common. They were all tied to a single private security consortium with government contracts spanning 3 decades, a consortium that officially didn't handle money, only logistics. This wasn't a robbery. It was a rewrite. Someone had rewritten ownership, and they'd done it so cleanly that the system accepted the lie as truth. At 2:03 a.m., Daniel copied the files. At 2:04 a.m., his building access was revoked. At 2:05 a.m., his phone stopped working. By morning, Daniel Mercer officially didn't exist. His employment record was sealed, his credentials invalid. His name removed from internal directories, and when he showed up anyway, security didn't recognize him. "Sir, you don't work here." That was the moment the story stopped being about money and became about survival. Daniel went public, not with the press, with a journalist no one trusted anymore, a woman named Elise Carter, once respected, now dismissed as obsessive. She listened. She always did. Daniel didn't give her everything, just enough: transaction fragments, approval anomalies, time stamps that contradicted each other. Elise didn't publish immediately, she waited. And that's why she lived. 2 days later, someone else tried to expose the theft. A contractor. He died in a car accident that involved no other vehicles. The report said heart failure. Elise understood the message. This wasn't a story you released all at once. It was one you leaked slowly, painfully, angrily. Over weeks, pieces surfaced. A forgotten audit mention. A budget discrepancy buried in an unrelated bill. A whistleblower complaint that had been quietly withdrawn. The public didn't notice, but inside government circles, fear returned. Because someone realized the truth: the robbery wasn't done by outsiders, it was done by architects. people who designed the system, people who knew where the cameras didn't point. The money had been taken to fund something illegal, not weapons, not war, something quieter, a private intelligence network, unaccountable, untraceable, permanent. The twist came months later. When Elise finally met Daniel again, he wasn't hiding, he was waiting, because Daniel hadn't been erased by mistake. He'd been chosen, the extra digit, it wasn't an error, it was a signature. Daniel had helped design that format years ago. Without realizing it, he'd built the back door. And when the time came, the system had selected the one person it knew would notice. The robbery needed a witness, a controlled leak, a scapegoat. Daniel was never meant to stop it, he was meant to justify it. The anger hit when Elise realized the final truth. The $500 million wasn't stolen, it was sacrificed, spent to create something that could never be undone. And the reason no one talks about this robbery is because talking about it means admitting the system didn't fail. It worked exactly as intended. And somewhere right now another transfer is already clearing. Silently, legally, perfectly, Daniel Mercer stopped running the moment he realized something worse than being hunted. He was being guided, every place he thought was safe had already been emptied, every contact he trusted had already been compromised, every mistake he made felt anticipated. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was pattern. The first time Daniel noticed it, he was hiding in a rented room above a closed laundromat in Baltimore. The kind of place no one searched because no one cared. He powered on a burner laptop, no internet, no network, just files. Yet the moment he opened the transaction logs, the screen froze. Then a message appeared, not an error, not malware, just text. You were always going to find this. Daniel slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering so hard it hurt. That sentence haunted him. Not how did you find this, not why, but you were always going to, as if the theft itself required an observer, as if the crime needed a conscience. That night, Elise Carter received an envelope slid under her apartment door. No return address, no stamp. Inside was a printed copy of the same transaction Daniel had flagged but annotated. Highlighted names, arrows, dates that extended years into the future, and one phrase written in red ink, Phase 1, capital reallocation complete. Elise didn't sleep, she cross-checked the names. Every one of them was connected to something buried, a contractor involved in black-budget logistics, a former intelligence official who vanished after a closed-door hearing. A corporate board member whose company never seemed to lose a contract. None of them were criminals in the traditional sense, they were architects, and then Elise noticed something else. Every annotated name had a matching death or disappearance linked to them, not the architect, someone close to them, a spouse, a partner, a colleague, collateral. The anger came fast. This wasn't about money, this was about obedience. Daniel contacted Elise through a relay system so convoluted it took him 3 days to send a single sentence. I think the robbery was permission. Elise stared at the words. Permission for what? Daniel explained in fragments. The $500 million wasn't spent, it was converted, turned into leverage. Favor exchanges, influence buys, quiet removals, the money funded access, and access was the real currency. Daniel had uncovered something worse than a heist, he'd found a mechanism. A system designed to operate parallel to government oversight, not outside it. A system that could erase people legally. Elise wanted to publish everything. Daniel begged her not to. Once it's public, he said, they don't need me alive anymore. That scared her because it meant one thing, right now he was still useful. Which meant the people behind the robbery hadn't finished yet. The next twist came when Daniel uncovered Phase 2. The money trail didn't end, it looped. Funds were returning. Not to government accounts, but to something new, a private trust registered under an unremarkable name. No board, no public mission, no employees. Yet it now controlled more capital than most federal agencies, and then Daniel saw the clause. The trust was activated by system instability, meaning war, economic collapse, mass unrest. The more chaotic the world became, the more power the trust gained. This wasn't theft, it was preparation. Elise realized the horrifying truth before Daniel did. Someone was betting on collapse. And funding the bet, she confronted him. They want things to get worse. Daniel didn't answer because he already knew the robbery wasn't hidden because it was illegal. It was hidden because it was premature. The story wasn't meant to break yet. That's when Daniel disappeared for real. No messages, no signals, nothing. Days passed, then weeks. Elise thought he was dead. Until her phone rang from a blocked number. Daniel's voice was different, calmer. Controlled, they found me, he said. Elise felt cold. Are you safe? A pause. There is no safe, only managed. Daniel explained. They didn't torture him, they didn't threaten him, they showed him the model, a predictive system. Built using stolen financial data, intelligence patterns, and behavioral forecasting, it could predict unrest, influence elections, trigger crises. The $500 million had funded its final deployment. And Daniel's role, he had helped unknowingly test it. His anomaly detection work had trained the system to anticipate internal dissent. His personality profile predicted he would leak. Predicted Elise, predicted the pacing of the exposure. They weren't reacting to the scandal, they were using it. Daniel was offered a choice: disappear permanently or stay visible and lie. He chose neither. He stayed silent. That silence broke the system, because the model depended on predictable outcomes, and Daniel stopped being predictable. That's when things escalated. Elise's apartment was searched, nothing taken. A warning, her publisher backed out, her accounts froze. Another warning, a source died, no warning at all. Anger replaced fear. Elise published a fragment, not the robbery, not the money, just the phrase. Phase 1, capital reallocation complete. It went viral because no one knew what it meant, but everyone felt it. The pressure forced a response, a congressional inquiry, carefully limited, carefully staged, and then the unthinkable happened. The inquiry confirmed the theft but declared it lawful. Authorized under emergency provisions no one remembered approving, the $500 million robbery was officially real and officially justified. The public outrage was brief, confusing, exhausting. And then it faded just like they planned. Daniel sent one last message: they don't care if people know, they only care if people understand, and then he was gone. Years later, Elise would learn the final twist. Daniel hadn't been erased, he'd been absorbed. He now existed as a legal entity, a non-person, a signature authority embedded inside the system. Unable to speak, unable to leave, but still watching. The $500 million robbery no one talks about wasn't the biggest because of the money, it was the biggest because it proved something terrifying. The most powerful crimes don't break the law, they redesign it, and the reason this robbery is never discussed is because it isn't over.